August freeze. On finding rhyme between summers, or rhythm, in the drifting patterned feather, a mime emerges out the heather, costumed not in white and black, but every hue of lilac. His bird-like features smile, and his spine bends like a paperback, and bows. Then how he tells me, wordlessly, the story of his dying, which was that too of his birth, in that undeliberate, oft-appearing shade of purplish peace on earth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene. This is the first episode of the fashion semester. Aaron, what a wonderful poem.
Thank you.
What inspired it?
It was inspired, the title is August Freeze, and I think we are in the dog days of summer. I feel like that's the category. We're recording this on August 13th. I feel like that's smack in the middle of dog days.
There's dogs, for sure.
Yeah. And so I was a little bit struck by the fact that during this period of summer, it feels like everything is kind of frozen in place. There's a stillness, which seems almost paradoxical because we associate heat with like change, biological change. But it just seems like through spring and the early part of summer, everything is going into bloom. And then it just like stays here at the apex. It's kind of frozen at the apex in the same way that maybe winter freezes things at the nadir of growth. So I was kind of thinking on that. And also fashion, as you said, this is the first episode of the fashion semester, which is kind of all about trends and change. And in nature, obviously, it's even more predictably cyclical than the fashion industry. So I was kind of trying to draw in a metaphor there. Rather boring, I know.
No, it's interesting to hear about. I'm just really eager to speak about fashion, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Don't know if that's exuding from my pores.
So for people who haven't listened to the podcast before, welcome to Solacene. People who have listened, welcome back. Welcome back and welcome front. I guess that's what we say. On this show, we design a beautiful, sustainable, tactile future, and we structure the episodes into semesters. So far, we've had 5 complete semesters, and today we are starting a 6th, all about clothes, because Alicia has an announcement to make.
Drum roll, everybody. We are introducing the Solacene clothing line, which I will show to those watching on YouTube. And also for those watching on YouTube, you may notice about 100 different things.
Yeah.
We have changed the set, and we now have clothes that you can purchase on our website. They're all up there now. There is the vest, the gilet, that I am showing here. Comes in 3 sizes, everything does. The goal with the sizes is to make them sustainable because your body changes, and so it's nice to have clothes that you can wear on all different days, all different seasons of life, and you don't have to throw out if you change size because our bodies aren't completely stagnant. So what it means is there's like a smaller size, which is for extra small, medium size, which is medium and large, and then a large size, which is extra large and 2XL.
So there's a range.
There's a range.
Okay.
And I was thinking a bit about this, if you go onto the website and there's something that you would like a design that you'd like, but it's unavailable in your size, maybe it's sold out, or maybe we just didn't make it in the size, just send us an email. And all of the materials are thrifted, so they're all either recycled or dead stock material that I found at thrift stores or different like bazaars and stuff. And so if you want a custom made piece, just let me know and we can work together to choose the right material for you and sizes and all that. And the other piece that I want to show you today is the tulip shorts because I just love them so much. Maybe because of the name, maybe because of the design, but they have a little tulip at the bottom. Aw, so
How
cute.
lovely.
They have little pockets and they're all elastic so that they can also always fit you, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of this semester's edition of the zine. We might write a fashion zine, we're not sure, but if so, it would come at the end of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
This time, Alicia's doing clothes, so I think fashion to you is kind of what writing is to me, so it's been very exciting to see you get to explore that and really perfect the designs to the point that some evenings Alicia's just been so livid and frustrated with patterns or whatever, but then after many, many iterations, finding what is Solacene. Because that's kind of our word for perfect, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And a few more things on the clothing line, just because we're here. As I said, the materials are sustainably sourced, but also at the end of their life, if you would like to return them back to us, you can do that and you'll get an in-store credit. And yeah, just we haven't worked out the exact mechanism because hopefully the clothes won't be returned within like a week.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if you get them and you want to just like make it circular, send us an email for now is the plan, but we'll also just probably have a website section about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can send it back and we will mend it, resell it, or recycle it, depending on what needs to be done, because we don't want them ending up in landfills.
Correct. So the first question for today, for people who are new again, Solacene is structured. We answer questions about the ideal world through the lens of design and also research, I suppose. The first one is almost like a catch-up. I called it almost like a here's what you missed on Glee. Because, which I know sounds like a very unerring joke, but I've watched Glee for those who are interested. And so we're going to be relating fashion to the previous 5 semesters, which in order are degrowth, education, storytelling, nature, and the internet, and kind of the lineage, the connections, and how we came to be here. So what were your notes on degrowth, Alicia? Seems like so long ago.
It does.
It was about 2 years ago.
Wow.
Also, I think we are we passed 100 episodes, so
that's also exciting.
Ago, but
yeah.
Congratulations to us.
Good job. So degrowth for me is Solacene. They're pretty much one and the same. Degrowth is a philosophy of activism, you could say. It's economic, it's social, it encapsulates all parts of life, and it's really just a great picture for how I envision the ideal world coming to be. It's more of like the process than the vision that we talk about often on here. But how it relates to this semester is that we're going to be talking about circularity, which is a degrowth concept, in that things in the fashion cycle should be circular. It shouldn't just be you buy it and then you throw it out. It should try and always have the end of life in mind.
Yeah.
Smaller scale fashion production is a degrowth concept, and it also will be something we're going to touch on in this semester.
I like that you said it was process rather than vision. I feel like that's a good way of, because I was kind of thinking that when I was reflecting, like the first semester was like so fundamentally different from everything that's come after it.
Yeah.
But the way I wrote it was that degrowth is a lens. You called it philosophy. It's like, it's an underlying sentiment or theme, whereas everything else has just been subjects through which we've used that degrowth philosophy to analyze. And I think fashion is a very good and tactile case study for that, because everybody owns clothes. A lot of people own a lot of clothes. And so you have a lot of opportunities to engage with the economy through a snail-like way. The symbol of degrowth is a snail, for people who are wondering.
Yeah.
And I guess the symbol of Solacene is a dragonfly, and they're kind of like husband and wife.
You could say that.
You and I.
Husband and wife, it's true.
The dragonfly and the snail.
I assume you're the dragonfly since you love him so much.
Yes.
Yeah. I also noted when reflecting on the previous semesters that the fashion one's really going to be a big old case study of like what the Solacene is going to look like. And it is really tactile, especially with the production of the small clothing line that we're producing, because it just gave me an opportunity to look at like every single step of the process and get hands-on experience with that.
So it felt to you like a real life university project in a way. Or just project.
Yeah. A couple other things that I think it relates to with degrowth is we're going to be talking a bit about DIY and skill building and like building resilience to the system. And degrowth is not a system that like promotes any one economic way of being. It doesn't promote capitalism, but it also isn't anti-capitalism. It's like
not necessarily.
Yeah, it's kind of in between. But we want to build resilience to whatever system you're functioning within, because you want your communities to be able to thrive even if everything fell apart. So when it comes to clothing, building resilience means knowing how to make your own clothes, mend, and even to an extent knowing how to make fibers and things like that. So we're definitely going to get into that on the semester.
Second topic that we covered was education. And I just mentioned university, and people might have picked up on the fact that we use the term semester rather than what I think most podcasts would call them is seasons. And that's because we started this almost immediately after graduating, and it just felt like a continuation of our undergrads, or like the next level, let's say. This is like our postgrad. I'm going to call it that.
Yeah.
So there is an element of, as I said, research and really like trying to be academic. I said to you yesterday that for you, it's more like an investigative journalism or like typical looking for sources and trying to synthesize these things. And for me, it is a bit that, but also largely something of creative writing. So some episodes I might just say to you, so why don't people wear socks on their ears? And then you'll be stammering to come up with a response. And I'll be like, but why don't they wear shoes on their teeth?
Yeah, so we're kind of playing two sides of a similar, we're not like a right wing and a left wing butting heads, but we're the left brain and the right brain.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But also you're creative and also I bring some facts. So it's not 100% like that. I just thought that would be our introduction. And I think overall with like education, it was similar in that particular semester was drawing on our experiences, our recent experiences, and also our years of observation going through the education system ourselves and coming up with different gripes and ideas. And I think this one will be similar, the fashion semester, because as I say, everybody owns clothes. You own quite a lot. I own some. And so we have the intimate familiarity with it in a way that I think parallels one's journey through the school system.
Yeah. My biggest connection to education is something that we didn't talk about too much on the education semester, which was like the social justice side of education and women's rights and accessibility. We didn't get into that too much, but I think on this semester we're going to talk a lot more. It'll probably be our most social justice heavy semester because it's something that I'm very passionate about when it comes to fashion. I'm not just passionate about like the design process, but also about the human rights violations that are associated with the industry right now and how we can solve them. And I think education will kind of come into this semester in that way of talking about how education can help inform purchasers, but also help liberate those who perhaps are stuck in cycles of poverty and reliant on the cotton industry or the sewing industry or what have you.
This is the slow unpacking of wicked problems. Wicked. Like the play. Like the musical.
Yeah.
Storytelling was the third semester, which also kind of stands out as like, that was weird. But the phrasing of it was deliberately storytelling rather than, let's say, narratives or even like arts, because we knew we would approach art in subsequent semesters, this being one of them. So I think storytelling was kind of like, I guess I would call that one half of art and also having some other kind of cultural significance. And the other half is the actual maybe medium. So we said in the future we might do an architecture semester or a film semester, or as this is, a fashion semester. So I think there's obviously an intimate relationship there. And also something that I tried to get across in the poem with a mime who kind of transmits information to you without words, right? That's his kind of curse. In fashion, that's kind of the blessing because it can tell so much wordlessly. And I think that's the lens, along with degrowth, through which I like to kind of approach different topics and just narrativize things. That's the appeal for me, is like, where's the story behind this? I think throughout the semester, I'll probably be taking a lot of inspiration from fiction. And I just think that's almost an infinite well of wisdom. So that's what would be, that's my storytelling fashion.
Cool. I just had a thought. Do you think, you know how the internet semester really like changed us, our internet use habits?
Yeah.
Do you think that this semester is going to impact your fashion sensibilities?
Well, I already said before this week that I wanted to get a new t-shirt. So for me, that's kind of leveling up in a way.
Yeah, I think over the semester, it's going to be made very clear to the listeners that you own about 8 clothing items and you're working on changing that.
Yeah, sure. I'll just be dressing like crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
That would be funny also if I was just wearing like crazy shades and you said, oh, that's Aaron's new thing. Or what if I wore
hats?
Yeah, what if I wore hats? What if I wore a fedora?
Who knows?
Right.
Viewers will have to view on YouTube to find out what you're wearing because we're not going to do an outfit of the week every day.
It's also kind of ironic if I'm dressing up like more and more, but nobody sees it because it's a podcast.
It's true.
It does. Fashion is voice a part of fashion? You know, people do different affectations. There's the vocal fry, like that. Do you think there's... Is that a part of it?
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have an episode or two on how it expresses who you are and how I think that's really important. I don't think everyone should be dressing in like paper bags the way that a lot of sustainable fashion brands tend to push, because obviously dyes are challenging for the environment to process and all other parts of like color and so on. But I think because there's so much existing fabric and sustainable options for dyeing that you don't have to dress in a brown paper bag. And so I think part of sustainability is rewriting what like sustainable fashion means. And I think using your voice and dressing kind of funkily is fun.
Yeah, you don't have to dress in a paper bag. Of course, some of us would like to. That's me. Do you know the definition of fashion that I got from Wikipedia is very broad. And the only reason I looked at this is because when I really started, this sounds like such a, I'm 14 and this is deep thing, but when I really started contemplating the semester and like just the term fashion and the industry and the medium and all that stuff, the first thing that struck me I wouldn't let go was the word fashion and how it seems almost incompatible with that of sustainability.
Yeah.
Because fashion either originated or has come to mean the latest trend. Like there's fashion as in, we're just talking about clothes as a whole, but there's also fashion as in, for instance, the latest fashion. But I feel like those first two words have just become redundant now because people just say, that's the fashion, right? And you could say about anything. You could say about behavior, about merchandising, about politics, whatever. So the definition I got from Wikipedia, everyone's favorite arbiter of words, was a form of self-expression with a specific context, such as time, place, and purpose. And then I looked into a bit the etymology, and it comes from Latin and then into Old French façon, which meant form, make, outward appearance. And that was in like the 12th, 13th century when I think just ideas of like aesthetics and elegance in France or whatever was there at that time started to become more of a cultural norm to be discussed. And then the way I traced it was to the 15th and 16th centuries in English, like to fashion as the verb. I fashioned something out of clay. And I think that's also a really neat way of, for me, as I said, I'm looking for like the narrative verbs are very active. I like thinking of this semester as in the fashion semester. We are fashioning things, which is kind of fun. And you've been fashioning things as well. Tulip shorts.
Certainly have been, yeah.
Gilet and a dress, which is called... We don't have a name for that one.
At the moment, yeah. Maybe something will arise, but I think it's just going to be the dress for right now. I had a few more things about storytelling and how it will relate to the semester. One is marketing, obviously. The reason that fashion is the issue it is today is because of marketing, and that's a huge part of storytelling. Personality, as you said, and then finally history, because the history of fashion is inextricable from like narrative histories and even fables and so on.
History is a story,
Yeah, so I think that will connect. Next is nature, which is going to be something that I'm just so excited to talk about because I will talk anyone's ear off about how cotton is grown or how you turn wool into yarn and so on. And people don't want to hear it. But on the podcast, you're going to be subjected to it. So that's how it relates to
Don't
nature.
Tell people, I mean, I guess we shouldn't tell people that they're not actually subjected. They can turn it off if they want.
Do they know that?
Hopefully not.
Yeah. The next part is obviously the pollution and the environmental impact of the fashion industry is going to connect to nature and just end of life resource consumption and so on.
Yeah, I think that's very obvious, as you said, case study. It will be almost kind of environmental, should I say, sustainability geared semester, and probably also social sustainability in like an overt way. Like everything we've talked about is about sustainability, but I think this will be very explicit. And my first thought about this was just that anything aesthetic, in my opinion, nature is the first and primary source of inspiration, because nature, we can kind of characterize it as this perfect well of shapes and designs. And fashion, I mean, you even mentioned already there's tulip shorts. Like already we kind of look to that. I had a mime coming out of the heather in my poem. But also with fashion, there's the obvious thing that you can't really talk about clothes without talking about the bodies that they're on, and bodies are part of nature. So I think that'll be also a connective tissue. I don't know, I just did snipping when I was talking about connecting, but...
It's coming together. And the internet. How did you buy most of your clothes, Aaron?
Shein.
Goodness.
No, I've never shopped on their websites, but yeah, it's largely online shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an obvious thing like fast fashion and your Sheins and your Amazon Basics and even if you're looking for something ostensibly more sustainable, like this is a large way in which people kind of interface with clothes today. But also I was just thinking about, like from us, from a personal perspective, the internet was our most recent semester. It felt like it went on for years because it was quite long. And so I think going straight from that to fashion to us was like, it's nice to go from something very floaty and conceptual to something that you can literally, like, I'm touching right now.
Yeah, and I think the internet also relates to fashion in the sense of like the influencer economy, I think we'll talk about quite a bit, and also how we think about clothes, because there's like the narrative, historical context, but really what we're all operating in is the internet era of clothing.
The cultural starter packs. I was also thinking about like avatars and personas and the way we present and that kind of psychology aspect of fashion. That's very interesting to me. That's something that I'm quite fascinated to discuss over the course of the next 3 months or so. Like, for instance, when the NFTs and the metaverse, when those were getting big, it's like, oh, you can buy skins and outfits for your characters in Fortnite. And, the initial response is like, this is ridiculous. Why would you spend real money on this? But then it's like, is it that much different from buying real clothes? Is it? I think it is. But we'll get into that over the semester. So I'm saying, like, there is discussion to be had there about the virtualization of commodities or something like that. I think I just made up those words, but we'll allow it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of online shopping, by the way, the garment of the week for today. Usually on Solacene, we do an organism of the week, which is just like a fun way of featuring different snails and mushrooms. During the last internet semester, we did a meme of the week, which we both really enjoyed because it kind of contributed to conversation in a way that wasn't so erratic, let's say, as just bringing up the harp sponge. The harp sponge. And so for this, we're doing a garment of the week. And I guess we can do it in the vague, like in the abstract, like this type of glove, or we can do it in the specific, which is what I've chosen today.
He's pulling them out.
These trousers, I guess this is a very YouTube-y semester, but also you can just describe it for the people on the...
Yeah, I will. So these are the Frank and Oak carpenter pants.
You know so much about that.
Because this is one of my favorite designs, is a carpenter pant. I really liked when they came into vogue, and Frank and Oak is a brand that I kind of keep up with. It's made in Montreal, at least designed in Montreal.
Yeah.
Not 100% sustainable, but they do their best. They are white, unbleached cotton.
Yes.
Yeah, cotton canvas.
100% organic cotton is what it says on the website.
Sweet. They have a loop on the side by the pocket.
I'm putting my finger through it.
That you could kind of hang your hammer on. Obviously, you do that a lot. And I personally hemmed the bottom of them.
You did. And I think...
I didn't serge them, so they're a little flaky.
String.
Yeah.
There it is. Which reflects really well on our clothing line. No, but I think these were a bit of a rush job from you, as are most of the things that you do for my clothing when I asked.
I did those like 2 years ago as well. I've been sewing for a long time, but mainly in the last year or two.
So I bought these about 18 months ago on the Frank and Oak websites, which again, I thought was like, that's funny because it's a Montreal brand.
That is funny.
They have a tiny badge on the back, which I like. I usually don't like those tiny badges, but it just says designed in Montreal since 2012 with some shapes and the brand name on it. And I don't like it for the brand name. It's not like that, but I just like when clothes have words on it. I've noticed small words. But we always talk about how maybe brands and companies shouldn't be so proud of the fact that they have like a recent establishment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it always seems kind of counterintuitive when it's like since 2019 and it's like, why would that be a good thing?
Yeah.
So I think if it doesn't start with a 1, you probably shouldn't hang that above your door. But, it is what it is. So these trousers, I wanted to feature them because I think it leads in well to the next question, which is the role of fashion in Solacene, because they are, as you called them, carpenter pants, or I've had them called like painter pants.
Yeah.
But I am yet to paint any walls in them and also yet to cut any wood. So you said there's the hook, or the loop, but all I've put so far in it is my thumb and maybe the odd mechanical pencil.
Or a banana.
Or a banana. So yeah, I thought that kind of discrepancy was key. That's something that I want to unpack during the semester, is the idea of like fashion as almost cosplay, fashion as imitation, where it's like, it's the same with military inspired gear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where everyone wants to dress like that, even though you're not in the military. It's similar if you're wearing a baseball jersey around and you've never held a bat, just like various things like that. I'm not putting a value judgment on it yet. Maybe that's for a future episode. Maybe that's for next week. We can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's, it's illusion is kind of key to it in a sense, or performance, like costuming. This is kind of costuming, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not going to fully go there yet, but the next question is, what's the role of fashion in the Solacene? And my first thought was there will be an almost moral inclination to dress for what you're doing in a way that doesn't exist now, for the better or worse. I mean, I don't think you need to wear a suit and tie to go to the grocery store as people did in the 20s.
Yeah.
But I do think just putting a nice outfit together, if you have the resources, it says something about you. And I think in the Solacene, it will be a kind of moral status quo, you could say,
right,
to dress for what you're doing. And it's like, if you're painting walls, you'll wear painting pants, but maybe you won't wear them if you're just going to the pub or whatever.
The pub?
I don't know where people go for socializing.
So Frank and Oak, anyway, it's a B Corp.
Mm-hmm.
B Corp.
Yeah.
Maybe you can shed some light on the B Corps.
Yeah, it's a beneficial corporation, correct? Well, you beezed over me. But
what does it mean in the vague sense? We can talk about it more maybe next week, but
yeah, it's probably a good thing to talk about in depth next week. I also wanted to do kind of dictionary episode anyway. But a B Corp is a corporation that often employs people who have barriers to work opportunities. So that's a part of it. They donate some of their funds and they are circular. It's kind of been watered down, I think, from its original meaning. I only really know it in its original context of
Is it like the organic farming of clothes brands?
It is kind of like the certification, which I think has been, over the years a bit too bureaucratized, and I'll get into it later. But it generally means that they're good for people and planet.
I was exploring their website a little bit, and is it too much information to say how much I paid for them?
No, I think that's fine.
People will realize how much money we've been raking in from these zines. But when I bought them, as I said, 18 months ago, they were $40 on sale from $60.
Oh, that's surprising to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when I looked yesterday or 2 days ago on the website, they're $45
on
sale from $99.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's the Canadian financial system.
There was a quote on their website about their design aspirations, and which I just thought was funny. It said, "Our desire to perfect clothing and capture the essence of modern Canadian living." So do you think these are particularly Canadian? Rugged. The rugged landscape.
Yeah.
White for snow. I do like the firmness of them. That's something.
Yeah.
I like hard clothes. We can talk about that maybe in the future. But yeah, as you said, you had to hem them. It wasn't terribly long, but this is the thing with buying clothes online. You don't know. And also I like some easy breezy ankles.
You do. We'll have to do an episode where we kind of do a ranking. Maybe that's where we could do a bracket for the semester of different brands.
Just our favorites though, or the best?
We could do a sustainability bracket or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll decide. It could either be our favorites or the best technically.
Or we could just do a bracket of our clothes. From a Solacene POV.
Maybe that'd be a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would be a lot of just holding things up and describing them. And it's not necessarily best for the podcast
that'd
format.
Be the most out of place Solacene video. Our haul. Is that what the video called? Try on?
Yeah. Try on haul.
Yeah. And then for me it's just one thing and it doesn't fit. And I'm like, oh. Okay, so the next question for today and the final question, because it's so big and is largely an overview for what's to come, the role of fashion in the Solacene. I guess this is kind of the question that we'll be answering over every episode, but today, let's just toss out some ideas.
Yeah.
The first one that I had, as I already kind of mentioned it, is the psychology, specifically designing the way that fashion kind of bridges the gap between one's persona and one's inner self, let's call it. I'm not that much of a trained psychologist, but I think everybody knows that we dress to impress, or you're dressing for the job you want to have, or you're dressing to fit in, or, you know, there's peer pressures, or you're dressing to stand out. Like, there's always something, and often it is very, very closely tied up to our insecurities and to our various psychological barriers or things to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fashion can be a way of working through those things rather than kind of insulating ourselves from them. So I think in the Solacene, that's how it will be. For instance, like untying it from branding.
Yeah.
Like that's an obvious example. The way that people put so much stock into being wearing Jordans and what all that entails kind of socially. But also there's the fact, like, again, returning to the idea of narrative, brands are kind of stories that we choose, I think. Like, if you buy a lot of Nike clothes, you are, to an extent, buying into the story that Nike is telling to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe a way of phrasing it in the Solacene is that we're telling our own story. Like, you're not really listening to what the brands have to say, but then you're looking for pieces that will match that in a way. I know we're never independent of our corporate and marketing influences and stuff like this, but we could work to become more independent, let's say.
Yeah, I agree.
More true to oneself.
Yeah, I think maybe next week is a good time to talk about it, or just the one after, talking about minimalism and how it's associated with sustainable or like Solacene clothing. So I imagine if someone right off the bat saw what Solacene was about and then pictured what would be in all of the Solacites' wardrobes, they'd picture the same thing.
Great.
But that's not necessarily what it is. We're not all what's in the Divergent movies, the ones
Abnegation.
that are... Yeah, we're not all abnegation. Like, we're all going to be still unique. So talking about minimalism, maximalism, and kind of where Solacene falls in there.
Yeah, I mean, you are.
Yeah.
Abnegation. I'm wearing green today, so it's very, very bold. We kind of joked before the episode, like, oh, Alicia's wearing black. I'll wear my color. And it's just this muted, dark green shirt.
Yeah.
That's why I say I want a new t-shirt, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Project of the week. My first thing is also like the symbolic intention of what clothing will mean in the Solacene. So all the things you just said, as I said earlier, the utility. And I also wanted to mention how historically a lot of social movements have been marked by fashion trends. So like the suffragettes, they, before the women's rights movement, would wear very structured and like kind of dressing for the male gaze, as they say. But then to rebel, they started tailoring their clothes to be more comfortable and loose-fitting. And then the second wave feminist movement had the mini skirts as kind of like a symbol. The Black Panthers all wore this kind of alternate military gear, which then leaked into the mainstream of people wearing all kind of, this like alternate all black military inspired.
And sustainability as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very recent one.
So I think in the Solacene, the clothes will... Well, I mean, this is a little bit bold on my part, but I feel like from the beginning I've said, at least because it's my passion, it will be kind of a part of how the Solacene is manifested is through clothing. Like, it'll be one of the first ways that happens. And I think that's really possible because it's like so intimate. As you've noted, it's like it's literally touching you all day. And there's nothing else that's touching you all day that isn't your body. So it's just like, it's so intimate and so psychological, and I think it's a really great tool and also just fun.
Yeah, I had that point too. I had basically 6 ideas, and one was that it's a way for people to wear their ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people do today, but often also we get it corrupted, whereas in the Solacene we'll be a bit more intelligent and consistent with it. Like, for instance, the example I had is my own folly, which was I once had a shirt that here's what happened. We both went to a craft store to buy a t-shirt to paint. We thought this would be fun. And I painted mine to be like degrowth. So there were wind turbines on and seagulls, and it said in big letters, degrowth. But I just bought the shirt that afternoon from the craft store, and it was literally Gildan. So it's, you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's that irony there. Yeah. Whereas in the Solacene, wearing one's ethics, I mean, my heart was in the right place, but just being a little bit more savvy, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, the fact that it is, as you say, this genuine tactile interaction with the economy and politics and community, almost in a way that's kind of like what you said about degrowth, almost in a way that supersedes any economic system. You know what I mean? Like people wear clothes under any kind of regime. And so it's like when people talk about dogs as man's best friend. It's like clothes are kind of, even if we hate them, they're our constant companion.
Yeah.
Unless you're a nudist. Maybe we can do an episode about nudism.
Yeah, the nudism episode. Oh my days. I mean, clothing also, in the Solacene, we haven't talked about it too much in the past, and we probably won't get into it too much this semester either, but I imagine things being more diverse. Like, this is another one of my gripes about the fashion industry is like, if you look at a screen, like a street shot, like the Google Street View of anywhere in the world, everyone looks the exact same. And that's a mechanism of colonialism to like homogenize everyone. Maybe we'll do an episode on that. But I really envision there being more diversity in just what we wear across the globe, because it's like, even just practically speaking, it doesn't make sense necessarily for everyone to be wearing t-shirts in the winter in Canada. Like, maybe you should be wearing a coat instead of having everything heated and so on.
It's also good that this comes immediately after our internet semester, because the internet, that's been the kicker. That's been the integral thing, right? And making it so that everyone on the streets of Tokyo dresses the same as on the streets of New York. So that was one of my points also, just like reforming localized cultures.
Yeah.
And this is a very hard thing to do. But in the Solacene, I think it will be like that just because it's more fun. Maybe the how could be a question for next week. I think we're racking up the questions, but we'll discern them afterwards.
My next thing is that it will provide meaningful work in the Solacene, because I think a lot of industries that exist right now will just basically not exist in the Solacene, or will be like relegated to just like a few people doing it instead of like 90% of my friends do IT. It'll be like 5% because not everything will be online.
More variety.
So there would be a need for meaningful work, and I think the crafting of a garment from beginning to end, instead of right now what people do when they work in a clothing factory, no matter where you are in the world, really, it's probably like 1% of clothes are made by hand. Like, everything's made by hand, but made from beginning to end by one person. And that's just like a really meaningful and fulfilling job. Right. And I think that will be a part of the Solacene culture.
Yeah, that's one of my few thoughts that I'm dead set on with regards to economics, is that it would be better if things were less efficient. Yeah. And that's kind of what you just said. It's objectively more efficient and therefore more profitable maybe for corporations to have one person, like a conveyor belt, right? One person stamp the thing, one person sew the seam, one person do the snipping, but much less enjoyable for them. Yeah. And also maybe for the person receiving it, much less of a personal connection. It's funny how we traced pretty much the same ideas, I think, for this question.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Because I also had a thought that was just, with regards to answering the question, the role of fashion in the Solacene, what I have written down is something to do. And then right beneath that I have, and something to not do. And so on the something to do, I was thinking all the things you said, fixing, fabricing, engaging with it, talking, knowing the sheep who provided the wool, like knowing that kind of thing. Like, it's something to think about. And especially with each garment more than we currently do, maybe rather than having 100 things, you have 30, but you know each one a lot better, and so you like each one more. And also with the something to not do, I think this is one of the ways that clothing has almost overstepped itself in modern culture, especially modern youth culture, in that so many public social spaces are, we're not just going to walk and talk, we're going to walk and talk and browse clothes, because what else is there to do? And there's almost an awkwardness if we're not at the mall. So I think in the Solacene, we won't need to frame so much of social life under the context of buying clothes. Yeah. Like, as I say, I still think there'll be engagement, and maybe like you and your friends sometimes have clothing swaps, right? Yep. I think that's a nice idea, but I just think it doesn't have to be, let's meet up at Abercrombie and Fitch. I don't think that's necessarily always bad, but I just don't think it should be so ubiquitous and almost seems necessary. And I guess this is a time also to mention, as you said, with the painter pants, kind of respecting the utility of things, or as I've said on previous episodes, umbrella theory, which is that people with umbrellas look cool, and it's a cool thing to have because it's so functional. And most umbrellas are ugly. Yeah. Actually, I think the more designed they are, the less cool they look.
Yeah.
Like they kind of have to look just very worn down and black, maybe navy. But it's just like you have this thing and you're keeping yourself dry with it.
Yeah.
And so I think clothes are similar, that this is maybe stepping out the bounds of this question, but outfits generally look nicer and more natural when they have just a purpose and they don't seem like they are trying too much, because they weren't trying too much. So I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think I'm fashionable?
Yeah.
On a scale of 0 to 10.
You have 10 sensibility. Like you have really great ideas for garments, but it's just the making it happen on a budget and not being able to make everything you want. Because even like, I mean, yeah, again, we'll get into this, but like making clothes is like you can have the best idea in the world, but making it a reality in a world that doesn't really, like there's one fabric store in walking distance and we're in a pretty big city.
Yes.
It's like that isn't really practical, but in the Solacene there'll be more fabric stores, fewer
skills.
Yeah.
Skills are good.
Yeah, skills are good.
Yeah, I'm also, it's not just a financial budget, but I would call it a temperature budget for me. In that I can't wear too much because I overheat like a computer.
Yeah. Because you're processing so much information.
Yeah. Like I featured these what do you call them, carpenter pants for the garment of the week, but I haven't worn them since February because it's just
the legs come out in March. They don't go away until like December.
They don't come back.
Yeah. I have two more. One, the rule of fashion in the Solacene is that it's going to be a sign of equity. Right now, it really can signal your class or your financial situation. And I just think there will be no more luxury, but there'll also be no more cheap goods. It's just like everything will be moderate. And right now, the moderate industry doesn't really exist. And a lot of the luxury goods are...
The middle class, you mean?
Yeah, like the middle class just doesn't really exist of clothing anymore. And I'm reading a really great book. It's called To Die For by Lucy Siegel. And she talks about how when fast fashion, as we know it, like really arose in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of those people who would always wear Louis Vuitton, Gucci, they were like, no, I would never. But then they kind of realized you can just be trendy and no one cares about the quality of the clothes. It's just how it looks.
Yeah.
And you can just have your Gucci handbag, like these high ticket items to kind of signal your wealth. And so like everyone shops fast fashion, and all of the luxury brands as we know it, like no exaggeration, all of them produce in the same factories as the Gap and H&M and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there is no quality garments unless they're like handmade or
handmade
locally made. And so in the Solacene, everything will be locally made, handmade by people you know and like made with love. Because a lot of the conditions that clothes are made under, even for sustainable fashion brands, are subpar, and therefore they're made with like suffering, and the quality is going to be compromised, and the essence of the human spirit is going to be compromised. I
do think that what you said about knowing the people who make it rather than it being H&M, Louis Vuitton, it's the same thing. Like with regards to your relationship to it as a consumer, I do think that that's such a nice idea as the norm. And also, we shouldn't talk like this is a really radical thing, because I think it's almost just what's in trend in Gen Z. You know what I mean? Like, I know they still are very into brands and labels.
Yeah.
But there's also a very, very prominent line of coolness, which is just, this is my grandma's, she made this jumper.
Yeah.
She knitted this.
Like people are even crocheting now.
Or I crocheted it. And that's a really cool thing. Remains to be seen if it will last, or if it's just, as they say, the fashion.
Yeah.
But for now, I think it's a very refreshing thing. Now, with regards luxury and just like class and maybe like the stratification of different clothing qualities, I think it's just pretty much a law of physics that there will always be some things that are nicer and some things that are worse.
Yeah, of course.
But like, definitely disentangling these things so that you don't have kids freezing out other kids because they're not wearing a certain brand or some are wearing and one isn't. Also, I think if we have more of an education about clothes, then we can recognize that everybody can be, this sounds like such a bumper sticker, but everybody can be stylish. You know, like there's a lot of wealthy people who really don't dress well, even if they spend a lot of money on it.
Mm-hmm.
So just like, they can be cool.
Yeah, just being nice.
Being nice.
It's nice.
That's a Solacene concept,
Yeah.
being nice. And my next point is about fashion as high art, which in the Solacene, which has always really fascinated me because it just seems like such an alien and weird, almost Emperor's New Clothes concept, the runways
Mm-hmm.
and those annual collections and the fashion weeks and the world of modeling at large. But I think we can talk about that. And also for me, what I think is key in the Solacene, maybe because I think the general sentiment towards that kind of world of high fashion is derision or mockery for most people. Where they're like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
But I think if we were a bit more open-minded and maybe a little bit less defensive about that kind of thing, it's similar to modern art. You know what I mean? When there'll be like a really weird abstract painting or art piece, and the initial response is always just like, that's dumb. Anybody who likes it is just falling for something. Mm-hmm. But I think it can be nice, and it's a Solacene concept to try and open your mind and try and appreciate these things. And something else I think, because I don't consider myself a fashion person or like a fashion interested thinker, but I can appreciate it in the same way that I appreciate like architecture, and I have kind of a passing interest just on the aesthetics of it, where different shapes and colors can inspire me. So I think there's so much of a stereotype or a connotation about what it means to be into fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas almost everyone will, as I say, walk around nice buildings and say, this is lovely. They wouldn't call themselves architecture people. But I think fashion should have a similar place in the Solacene.
Yeah, and I think the runway and even like magazines and stuff will kind of replace the window shopping side of the fashion industry in the Solacene, because this was like a big revelation to me of like, well, how can fashion be sustainable? Because as you said, like those words really don't go together. But I think looking at it like art, and maybe you go to a runway show or you see pictures from a runway show and you say, oh, this is such a cool color combination, or even just like proportion wise, like I can work with that and then take the inspiration to your wardrobe. I really, really like a small wardrobe on YouTube. She does every season. She does it, and so does Jenny Mustard, and I guess probably a million different YouTube fashion people do. They take a look at the runways for the season, and then they go to their closet and try and recreate it. And I just think that's like a wonderful idea for the Solacene, because you don't want everyone to be just dressing the same forever. It's like, it's cool to have like fashions, but just the seasons need to relax, not have like the mid-summer, the end of summer season, just having like 2 or 3. And
so there's been an acceleration, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So we can talk about that, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that's also like something that degrowth deals with, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then my final thought about this was fashion as, in the Solacene, time capsules, or in a way, history lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not exactly talking about how people see the picture of the denim and they're like, oh, that's so 90s, or like the high-waisted thing, that's so whatever's. I'm talking more about it. It's as a historical artifact, or like historical evidence of things, even when maybe corporations or governments or media or whoever tries to, pun intended, pull the wool over our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Fashion can be that proof. Like, for instance, you can look back at your great-grandparents' closet or the clothes, or just read about it and say, wait, they were wearing nicer clothes than we were?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though that seems to go against the narrative of improvements and quality of life going up and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, at least in this one specific niche way of the composition of our jeans or the durability of our shirts, it seems to have gotten worse. That's weird. But fashion is this kind of, it's like in 1984, when he's like, they stumble upon the facts.
Yeah.
Fashion is like the facts. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think there's an etymological connection there as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. That also reminds me, when you're talking about like kind of how it's a time capsule, I will definitely have an episode this semester about fast homeware, which is an emerging industry.
What is that?
It's like IKEA. And then if you haven't noticed, because I mean, we don't really shop on H&M and stuff, but over the last like 5 years, they've all developed as like men's, women's, kids, home.
Oh, home.
on all of the different fashion websites. And there's Shein does it, Simon's does it, like I think probably everywhere does. And I think that's kind of an interesting
development.
Yeah, because we've kind of compromised everything we can on clothes. Everything's just made out of plastic.
Now we're moving on to furniture.
It's like, let's see if we can make this couch out of plastic and see if no one notices.
Yeah. Can we do, would there ever be a Solacene home? Like Solacene home line where we make cushions and stuff? I don't think so.
No, I don't really
like
picture that.
cushions.
No.
That's my thing. I don't like cushions.
Hmm.
I had one final quote to close the episode, which is, I think, by Ralph Lauren. That's what the quotes on Google Images, that's what the picture on Google Images that was like a stock looking thing of a silhouetted cliff with the white text in front of it.
Yeah.
It said, I don't design clothes, I design dreams.
Oh,
and
wow.
I know people might kind of roll their eyes about that, especially if they're familiar with the fashion industry or Polo Ralph Lauren and like, and its impact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and it's easy to be cynical about this, but I think from a Solacene point of view, we're trying to design dreams here.
Yeah, we are.
Imagining a beautiful, sustainable, tactile future.
We are Ralph Lauren.
The Ralph Lauren of ideas or words of podcasts.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in the tulip shorts, the gilet, or the as yet unnamed dress, maybe by the time you go on the website it will have a name, but you can follow the link in the description to our shop, and we also have our previous scenes on there. And also, please email us, contact us, episode ideas, comments, questions, criticisms, anything else. Oh yeah, subscribe
and review.
And
there's a lot of demands.
And follow. We're on Instagram. Do it all. Just
help us out, because we really like making this podcast, and the more people it gets to, the more I smile at night. That's pretty much it. Okay, bye everyone.